Evil threatens Hyrule, and a descendant of the god Hylia and a champion chosen by the gods oppose it. It is a legend that has happened many times, but one time was not like the others. This time, the champion chosen by the gods was just a boy when he was called upon to rid the world of evil. So the boy had to travel 7 years into the future, so that he could become strong enough to become the champion the people of Hyrule needed him to be. And so, the boy became a man, and with the aid of Hyrule's 6 sages and the descendant of Hylia, the boy who was now a man faced off against the evil, and he won. But this victory came at a hefty price. In the 7 years the boy was gone, evil had ravaged the land, and many of Hyrule's citizens had perished. So to truly win, the boy who became a man had to travel 7 years into the past he came from to become a boy again, and while there, warn the people of Hyrule of the coming evil so that they could strike it down before it grew too strong. This worked, and many deaths were averted because of this, but something had happened. When the man traveled back in time to the time when he was a boy, time became fragmented. The war-torn future he had traveled to, the war-torn future where he had vanquished evil, the war-torn future he had traveled back from and prevented from ever happening, still existed. But it not only existed, there were 2 versions of it. One where he vanquished evil and traveled back, leaving it without a hero to defend it from future threats. And another, much darker future, where he failed his quest and he was vanquished instead of the evil. An evil that now ruled that world unchecked. And both of these futures existed alongside his own future. Or did they? Hello, and welcome to Hyrule Investigations, a show where I try to close the case on popular fan theories and questions in the Zelda games. In this episode, we're not looking at a singular game, but all of them, and the case files for this episode. The 3-split timeline, and our objectives of this episode is to combine all the timelines into a single, unified timeline, if we can. I always thought that the 3-split timeline was off. It didn't make sense to me, but as many theorists will tell you, it's the only way that the game's continuity can make any sense, since games like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess contradict each other. This is a statement I have echoed many times, but there has always been a lingering thought in the back of my mind. It just never really sat well with me. But, as I stated earlier, it's the only way the continuity can make any sense, because of the contradictions in the games, right? Wrong. When I finally sat down and looked at the timeline split, and looked at the supposed evidence for the split, I just didn't see any conclusive evidence that proves the split. But before we can get into compiling our new timeline, we first need to establish our other timelines, so we're all on the same page. So, explain the timelines for us, soft-spoken narrator man. In one timeline, the Downfall timeline, the hero is vanquished during his fight against the evil Ganon. Ganon somehow managed to get himself trapped in the Dark World, even though he rules the world and has the complete Triforce. Sometime after that, an evil wizard takes over the land of Hyrule, and a new hero rises to the occasion. A hero that we will, for the sake of not saying Link 900 times, refer to as the legendary hero. The legendary hero is the protagonist of A Link to the Past, Oracle of Seasons, Oracle of Ages, and Link's Awakening. And these games take place within the span of a year or 2, presumably. After his last adventure, he is adrift at sea, and we never see him again. So when Hyrule once again is in trouble 100 years later, a new hero is called upon, the hero of Hyrule. This is the protagonist of A Link Between World and Triforce Heroes, 2 games that happened back to back. And like the hero before him, the hero of Hyrule also disappears after his last adventure. So when Hyrule needs a hero again hundreds of years later, another hero is called upon, who is also called the hero of Hyrule. This hero of Hyrule, the hero of Hyrule 2, defeats Ganon in the original Legend of Zelda and stops his resurrection in its sequel, The Adventure of Link. and like all the heroes before him, he's never heard from after his last adventure. For our second timeline, we need to rewind time back to the end boss fight in Ocarina of Time. This timeline is created when the hero battles against the evil Ganon and wins, then travels back 7 years into the past and warns the people of Hyrule of Ganondorf's, the man version of Ganon's, evil plans. After our hero, known as the Hero of Time, travels back and warns the people of Hyrule, he leaves Hyrule to go searching for his friend. During his search, he finds a new adventure in Termina, and after the events of Majora's Mask take place, he, like his other counterparts, is never heard from again. Kind of. I say kind of because, sometime later, the land of Hyrule is once again in need of a hero, and this time, the hero called upon is a blood descendant of the Hero of Time. And he saves the land of Hyrule from Ganon in the game Twilight Princess, and earns the title of the hero chosen by the gods. Like all other heroes, he too disappears when his adventure is over, and is never heard from again. Kind of. I say kind of because, like previously, the hero called upon to save the world in Four Swords Adventures might be a descendant of the hero chosen by the gods. Even if he isn't, he does like the hero before him and saves the land of Hyrule from Ganon. In our last timeline, we once again travel back to the fight against Ganon at the end of Ocarina of Time. Just like the child timeline, Link successfully defeated Ganon and the 6 sages banished him to the Sacred Realm. And just like the child timeline, Link then went back in time 7 years to his own time to stop Ganondorf's invasion from ever happening. However, this didn't erase the timeline where Link was an adult. Instead, this timeline continued to live on, but without a Link in it. So when Hyrule needs a hero, there is no hero available, and to stop Ganon, the gods flood the land of Hyrule. Sometime later, Ganon escapes and Hyrule is once again in need of a hero. But unlike last time, this time there is a hero available, the Hero of Winds. This hero stops Ganon's plans in the Wind Waker and kills him for good. And later he departs with his pirate friends and finds himself in the strange new world of the Ocean King. And this is here where the plot of Phantom Hourglass takes place. After the events of that game, the Hero of Winds and his friends find a new continent and settle it. Hundreds of years later, a Ganon-like evil threatens the land of New Hyrule, and another hero is called upon to save the day. The Hero of Trains. The Hero of Trains, despite his dubious title, saves the day, and like all the other heroes before him, and many after him, he is also never heard from again after his adventure is over.
Thank you for that soft-spoken narrator, man. Right, if you've made it this far into the video, you're probably wondering why I'm doing all this. I've just described why the timelines diverge, so surely there are 3 timelines. Well, yes, kind of, but not really. In the games themselves, there's never any mention of the timeline. There is, however, evidence to the exact contrary, and we're gonna look at that evidence. Evidence number 1. Zelda herself suggests that the adult timeline will be rewritten. At the end of Ocarina of Time, when Zelda sends back Link, she says that the bridge between the times will be closed. And that, by itself, doesn't disprove the dual timelines, and it's often stated as the reason for the timelines to begin with. However, I believe this is cherry picking, as Zelda doesn't end her monologue here. In fact, right after she says that the road between times will be closed, she continues and says, when peace returns to Hyrule, it will be time for us to say goodbye. So the goodbye doesn't come until after Link has returned peace to Hyrule, which implies that once Link completes his task, the future she is currently in will be rewritten and erased. Evidence number 2. Hyrule Historia is not factual. The only source that describes the timeline is the Hyrule Historia, and the Hyrule Historia directly contradicts in-game lore on several occasions. So if we eliminate Hyrule Historia as empirical fact, we eliminate every definitive confirmation for the dual timeline. Evidence number 3. A Link Between Worlds takes place after the Wind Waker and Majora's Mask. A Link Between Worlds references both Majora's Mask and Wind Waker as being things that happened in the past, meaning that those events happened prior to that game beginning, both of them. So is that it? No. I have 3 more pieces of evidence, but we're gonna save them for later. For now, let's look at the obstacles we must account for in the timelines when we later begin to stitch our true timeline together. In the Downfall timeline, there are only 2 things we need to account for. Prior to the events of A Link to the Past, the one where he travels between worlds and not in time, there was the Imprisoning War, where the 7 sages shut down the portal between the light and the dark world, trapping Ganon within the dark world. So the events of that game and that timeline as a whole has to take place after Ganon is sealed, but not killed. The other thing we need to account for is our evidence number 2. The events of Majora's Mask and the Wind Waker both occur prior to A Link Between Worlds, so we need to place the events of the Downfall timeline after those 2 games. In the Child timeline, there are 3 things we need to account for. The timeline begins with the events of Majora's Mask, meaning that they must be placed directly after Ocarina of Time. Secondly, we learn in Twilight Princess that the 7 sages attempted to execute Ganon a few years after Ocarina of Time, but then they saw that he still possessed the Triforce of Power, and so they banished him to the Twilight Realm instead. Lastly, the Link from Twilight Princess is a descendant of the Hero of Time, so we need to keep that in mind when placing this timeline in our new timeline. In the adult timeline, we only need to account for the fact that in the game's opening narration, it is stated that Ganon appeared in an era without a hero, and because there was no hero, the gods flooded Hyrule, sealing it beneath the ocean. A common misconception is that the Ganon referred to in this game is Beast Ganon from the adult timeline, and that when he appears, it is because he escaped his imprisonment from the Sacred Realm. However, this is never stated in the game itself. This is actually where our 4th piece of evidence comes in. Evidence number 4. Beast Ganon is never confirmed. I believe that when people state the Ganon/Ganondorf point to support the adult timeline, they are referring to this line. After his defeat at the hands of the Hero of Time, Ganondorf was sealed away, but not for all time. He was revived, and then he returned to Hyrule in a red wrath. He attacked this temple and stole my soul, knowing that he had to remove the power contained in that enchanted blade. This can at a glance look like Ganon was freed from imprisonment in the Sacred Realm, returned to Hyrule and laid siege to the temple. But this is not the case. There are actually 2 separate sentences here. Ganon was sealed away, but it's never stated when he was sealed, and he did return to Hyrule, but then the gods flooded Hyrule. And it isn't until he returns a second time from beneath the ocean that he attacks the temple mentioned and kills the Wind Sage. With all those things in mind, let's look at our timeline and see if we can create a coherent, true, unified timeline without any contradictions. This is also where our last 2 pieces of evidence come in, so don't worry, I have not forgotten about them yet. The easy part is obviously placing the original unified timeline. Skyward Sword, Minish Cap, 4 Sword Adventures all predate this supposed speed timeline, which happens in Ocarina. And then after that, things get a little harder. Both the adult timeline and the child timeline call out the Hero of Time by name. Though they both call him out, I'm placing the child timeline directly after Ocarina of Time, starting with Majora's Mask, and continuing with Twilight Princess and ending with 4 Swords Adventures. And then what? Well, by now I've probably pissed off a lot of people, because Ganon, the Beast Ganon we see at the end of Ocarina of Time, he's mentioned in the opening of Wind Waker, right? Wrong. Evidence number 5. Ganon and Ganondorf are referred to interjectively in all the timelines. It is correct that Ganon is mentioned as Ganon and not Ganondorf, but throughout the entirety of the series, the names Ganon and Ganondorf are used interjectively to describe the same person from the same timeline, and Wind Waker is no different. Besides, at the end of Ocarina of Time, we see that Ganon transforms into Ganondorf as he is sealed within the Sacred Realm, so when Ganondorf returns in the Wind Waker, there's no reason for him to be in his beast form. And it is never stated explicitly anywhere that this is the shape he takes during his invasion. But that isn't even the final nail in the coffin. Evidence number 6. The realm of Twilight is mentioned in the Wind Waker. When the former king of Hyrule describes Ganon, he does it like this. Once, long ago, this land of Hyrule was turned into a world of shadows by Ganon, who sought to obtain the power of the gods for his own evil ends. Shadows. He turned the world into a world of shadows. You know what game he doesn't do that in? Ocarina of Time. But you know what game he does do that in? Twilight Princess. Meaning that the Ganon who appeared in the Wind Waker has to be the Ganon that originally appeared in Twilight Princess. Meaning that the Wind Waker chronologically takes place after Twilight Princess, in the same timeline, according to the events of the games themselves. With that settled, we then place Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks in our timeline, and then what happens after that? The Downfall timeline can't take place after the Wind Waker, since the world of the Wind Waker is completely flooded and nothing like that is present in the Downfall timeline. Well, at the end of Wind Waker, the Hyrule beneath the ocean is flooded. And at the end of Phantom Hourglass, we see that our hero has found a new continent. And isn't that weird? The people of Hyrule have been struggling atop mountaintops for thousands of years, and meanwhile there was just another continent right over there. Well, it wasn't over there. When the Hyrule beneath the ocean was flooded at the end of Wind Waker, the water levels of the Great Sea began lowering, first revealing the continent of New Hyrule that the hero of Winds and his friends settle, and then as the years go by and the waters of the Great Sea flows into every crack of the Hyrule beneath the ocean, and after years and years and years and years, the old Hyrule as we know it is back. And that is when the events prior to A Link to the Past happen. You know, the game about Link travel between worlds and not to be confused with the game A Link Between Worlds. And with that out of the way, the Downfall timeline as a whole is placed at the end of the adult timeline. And as an added bonus, we're also squashing the year-old question, where does Breath of the Wild fit in? Because it fits in right at the end of the Downfall timeline. And at the end of the entire Zelda timeline, which is now a singular entity and not a three-split mess. With the entire canon of the Zelda timeline placed into a non-contradictory timeline, I'm officially closing the case on the true unified timeline. If you have any objections to my findings or feel that there's something I've missed, please post your thoughts down below. Closed cases can always be opened back up. But for now, bye bye.